So it seems it's a big edition launch week for Games Workshop. Skaventide is here, the pricing and release date and pre-order times are all confirmed, with some very shiny new Stormcast and Ratmen on the way. Beyond that, let's talk about a few of the other things going on from Games Workshop, including just a very shaky hint that there could be some new Angels on the way. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, where it's a big release week for Games Workshop this week. As promised, this week is the Age of Sigmar 4th edition week with Skaventide with a bunch of really cool new miniatures on the way. The price of it's confirmed, plus I also wanted to talk about just one little interesting thing that I was tipped off about the Sanguinor miniature going off sale in the USA, which potentially is pretty interesting given a recent rumour engine. In any case, let's talk about the week's releases. Kind of unusually for Games Workshop, we did know that Age of Sigmar 4th edition and the Skaventide box were coming ahead of time. Usually they're kind of tight-lipped as to exactly what week's releases come out, but I guess like with 40k, when you've got a really big edition launch coming out, I believe they tend to set their dates in stone quite a while away. In any case, confirmed as promised, the big Age of Sigmar launch box is the 29th of June, going up for pre-order then, and then for release on the 13th of July, and this one's essentially the Age of Sigmar box equivalent to the Leviathan box for 40k. It seems that the confirmed price for this one is as that giveaway would have implied. It seems that it's coming for £160, 265 US dollars, 210 euros, 450 Australian dollars, or 320 Canadian dollars. I say that price is pretty well equivalent to Leviathan in Games Workshop's mind at least. That one was very slightly cheaper, though not by all that much. And despite being really quite a big pricey investment, it does look similar to the Leviathan box in that it's a better deal than normal compared with what Games Workshop would sell those miniatures for individually, and by quite a long way. Hopefully I'll follow this one up with a video a bit later in the week talking through the miniature contents and a rough expected pricing breakdown for them, and maybe do a bit of examining as to how good a deal it looks. For pre-order times, Games Workshop has fairly clearly communicated when it would go on sale. It is their normal pre-order times as best I can tell. 10 AM in the UK, between 10 AM and 1 PM depending on where you live in the USA and Canada, 11 AM in Europe, and midday Eastern Time in Australia. As with Games Workshop's normal big box releases, we never really know whether or not they're going to have made enough of them. This one is as with the Leviathan box set, in that it's available while stocks last, and they'll probably be doing their store queuing type thing with limited numbers of orders per customer. At least in the past, when compared with Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar boxes have tended to be in at least fairly good supply. I remember there's been at least a couple of their edition launch boxes where it seemed kind of clear that they'd made far more than people actually had demand for, and they were available for a very long time. And if anything, that's certainly preferable. It means that people have a chance to pick them up for quite a while, and not making anyone feel disappointed if they didn't happen to check in at the actual release time. I feel like this particular box set will certainly have vastly more demand than most of the normal run-of-the-mill releases for Age of Sigmar, though it remains to be seen by just how much. It just feels like it's going to be a particularly popular launch box, given that these Stormcast players basically get redesigned units that are their core forces, so it's probably going to be in stronger demand than normal for the Stormcast Eternals. And then of course there's the long-awaited remoulding of Skaven from their distant past in Fantasy, one of the setting's more beloved races, and in general their new miniatures have been pretty well received. As ever, if you were looking to pick up the box set, or any other Warhammer things in general, there are a bunch of discount retailers linked down below every single video. Element Games in the UK, usually 15 or 20% off, Gap Games in Australia for 21% off, Fenris Workshop in Canada for 10% off, and Wargame Portal in the USA for 15% off. If you were looking to pick up one of these box sets anyway, and you wanted to help support the channel, buying through any of those can do so, and it does also save a good amount versus Games Workshop's web store, of course. My guess is that they might have a few more copies of this than a bunch of the more recent Battle Forces, so hopefully for once they should have enough supply to go around. Some of those discount retailers do have a slightly different go time compared with Games Workshop. Wargame Portal and Fenris Workshop are from around about midnight in the USA, Central Time for Wargame Portal and Eastern Time for Fenris, and then Element and Gap Games both go at the same time as Games Workshop pre-orders do, 10 AM in the UK or midday Australian Eastern Time for Gap Games. If you are absolutely sure that you're picking up a copy, then it doesn't hurt to be early, I'd say. Like I said, I would be surprised if this one sells out too fast, but given Games Workshop, you never really can be too sure about that. As mentioned, later in the week I might try and do a breakdown of the box in terms of value and look at the individual units in detail a bit more. Being pretty busy with 40k rules, I've got pretty much no understanding of what they'll do in game particularly, but I have been enjoying the miniature previews more than most. As box sets go though, it is fairly hefty on the miniature front. 74 models is more than the Leviathan box set, though admittedly really quite a lot of those miniatures are clan rats. The Skaventide has got a veritable horde as you'd expect. They do have some fun things like those nice warped rat ogres, plus the Jezzails and the great big rattling gun. And the Vermin Lord is nice and warped and twisted. On the Stormcast side, it's all pretty elite, and there's some nice resculpted versions of their battle line stuff, led into battle by a Lord on a steed. Otherwise, they've got the big core rulebook, supplies for playing their new Spearhead game mode, plus some data cards and things, and a gaming board and stuff, fairly expected stuff from a starter set, and they do have a bit of terrain in this one, which they didn't in Leviathan, which is kind of nice. As mentioned earlier in the week, they showed off the things that you can get for pre-ordering it in different ways. If you do so from the web store, then you get some objective tokens, some cool coins with Skaven and Stormcast iconography on. If you pick it up from Games Workshop stores, then you get some command point trackers, which are just basically metal tokens for Skaven or Stormcast, and independent retailers will in theory have some notebooks going around, though I feel like Games Workshop is a bit more sketchy as to whether or not they actually ship out enough supply of those. Finally, in just another little interesting parallel with Leviathan, it looks like they're doing a starting campaign type thing. There's QR codes in the Skaventide box, and you get to submit results either on the Stormcast or the Skaven side, and the one that wins the campaign gets their miniature reveals and likely their army book first, at least if Space Marines and Tyranids from Leviathan are to be followed as a precedent. Overall, kind of interesting to see the Sigmar version of essentially the 10th edition launch replayed again. Let me know what you make of it though. Would you be tempted to pick up the Sigmar starting box set or not? Otherwise though, moving on to one of the other major things I wanted to talk about, and perhaps tacked on a little bit here, given that I didn't think it was quite enough to warrant its own video just for itself. It's interesting to see that the Sanguinor has been marked as sold out online from the US web store. The Avenging Angel of the Blood Angels no longer on sale. Currently it is still up on the UK and EU web stores and the Australian and the New Zealand ones. It was already an online-only model, so it typically tended to be from Games Workshop Direct, with only a few discount retailers offering them. I'm sure the majority of you will probably be aware of what the Sanguinor is, but basically he's the Blood Angel's sort of spiritual avenging angel, a semi-mythical figure of the chapter, and believed to be a sort of manifestation of their consciousness and yearning for their Primarch back. In some ways almost a ghostly demon form of the Primarch Sanguinius himself. It feels like if Games Workshop ever were to release a sort of Sanguinius for Warhammer 40k, then this would be kind of how they'd do it. Though to be honest, I think they can and should keep him as a sort of spectral apparitional ghost type thing. He's very famously dead in the lore at the War Master's hand, and basically the chapter's entire identity is built off that. It's definitely possible to read a bit too much into Games Workshop web store coding and things. Occasionally it has been wrong in the past, but the vast majority of times they do use the right code and the right thing by a model when it's gone out of production. On the GW web store, temporarily out of stock means that it's going to be coming back. Things go temporarily out of stock all the time, but for things that actually get marked as sold out online, in general that means that it's gone and it's not coming back. That's the code, say, for example, they use when they removed all those Necron Forge World models this week, or for other things like, say, when they've been updating the combat patrols. That happens to the 9th edition ones before the 10th edition ones come out. I feel like it might be a bit more clear if it had gone out of production in all the web stores rather than just one, and that might make it just a little bit more shaky in terms of information, though it certainly could be that basically Games Workshop is discontinuing this Sanguinor model, and the USA just happens to have sold out first. I think if we didn't have other reason to believe that the Sanguinor might get a re-release though, then I wouldn't have made such a big deal about it. But Blood Angels have been rumoured to get a release at some point in 10th edition. It makes a lot of logical sense that if the Dark Angels get them, then the Blood Angels would too. And I feel like the groundwork has been laid at the start of the edition much in the same way as it was for the Dark Angels. We had generic Terminators and then special Deathwing ones come out. And we've also had some generic jump packs, so it kind of makes sense that some special Blood Angels ones are coming too. Beyond that, there's definitely been rumours. I certainly noticed that Chapter Master Valvrax made a few videos on the subject. I'm not sure if literally all the online discussion comes from those, but people are certainly expecting Blood Angels to have a big release in 10th. Then on top of that, we had this interesting Parchment teaser, which as soon as a lot of people saw it, the reaction was, is this new Blood Angels? There were a couple of other possibilities that it could be, but it turns out they've largely been false. Given that we had Stormcast Eternals out, people were thinking whether or not it might be Age of Sigmar Prosecutors redone. The old ones had a similar sort of styling, but the new ones don't. At least at the moment it doesn't appear to be Sigmar. And then with the Jump Canoness coming out for the Sisters, people were wondering whether or not it could be some trailing parchments like Celestine has for her, but it turned out not to be. Finally, we got this Celestian Sacrosanct Avalyn. She's going to be coming out as a Black Library miniature, and at first impressions I thought that this was the answer to the rumour engine, but on closer inspection it actually looks like this isn't the parchment that we're looking for. It appears that at no point on the miniature the parchment exactly lines up with either of her little cherub bearers there, and also the style of the parchment is very similar but also not quite the same. The rumour engine one has sort of indented and tattered edges, and that doesn't appear to be the case for the ones that the cherubs are bearing. They maybe look a bit crumpled, but they don't look like they've got tattered at the edges. They have very clean lines. There's also no bits that quite look as perfectly side by side as these ones are, making me think that it's a different miniature. Whether it is indeed a Sanguinor or not, I feel like it would probably fit better with the Sanguinor here. He does look like he's got two trailing parchments, and on the current miniature it looks like the letters are painted in a very similar styling with those paragraphs and then dots between them. And given the Sanguinor's removal, it feels like there's at least a reasonable chance that this could represent the updated model. Obviously this one's a little bit out there though, so let me know what you think down in the comments. Now a few of the other possibilities have been ruled out. Are we looking at a new Sanguinor or not? It seems that in terms of the Sigmar releases, it is just the big box set this week. I guess any other supporting stuff will be along a bit later, including no doubt new starter sets, and then some more Skaven and Stormcast individual releases. Besides that, they've got a couple of books out, a Skaventide novel, so tying in with the lore and narrative of the launch. Plus otherwise, there's a Warhammer World Dioramas compendium. I must admit I didn't realise that they did them up to now. Kind of interesting that they've got some snazzy photos of all the cool stuff they've got going on there. It is quite a lot. And unusually for Warhammer Plus, they're making one of their Hammer and Bolter episodes a free-to-watch one. This one's an Age of Sigmar set one. Though I'll admit I'm not sure if it's anything to do with the narrative of Skaventide. Sounds like they're hunting things in the depths of a big city, though I suppose that could be rat men for all we know. Finally, there were some 40k reveals this week, though it is more of the plotty sort of variety. These ones probably a bit too big for the tabletop, I guess. I suppose you could use the Great Unclean one for a proxy in-game, I guess. It'd set you back quite a lot less. The ones on the left are the ones that they already had, with the Great Unclean one and the Squig and the Griff Hound and things. And then they've just announced a few more, a Servo Skull, a little Watcher in the Dark bearing the Lion Helm, a Tyrannid Ripper and a Sassy Nurgling, plus a purple son of Shyish from the Realm of Death in Sigmar. Not sure when they'll be released, but apparently it'll be sometime later in the year. In any case though, let me know what you make of the news and releases. Would you be tempted by the Skaventide box set at that price? And do you think that the Sanguinor's removal from the US web store and that rumour engine could be a new miniature for him? Let me know what you make of that down in the comments below. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this. I do tend to post new videos just about every day, mainly on 40k, though as I said I'll check back for that Skaventide box summary later in the week, and as mentioned if you were looking to pick it up at the next weekend, feel free to check out the discount links down in the video description if you'd like to support the channel while doing so. Finally, as well as those discount links, the channel does have a Patreon page as well if you'd like to help to keep these videos coming a bit more directly. A big thank you to you guys who do support there, as it is what allows me to keep on doing this as my full-time thing. I do try and give a few rewards to channel patrons, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.